Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Today is October 6th, 2015, and this is the KNKL SHOW, episode 264, where we learn to be better artists. As I said, I'm Kienan Lafferty, and we're going to be jumping into today. I called myself captain because we're going to be taking a jolly sail down the Runeterra seas with the Gangplank visual update. We're going to be talking about that stuff. But before we get into that, let's talk about, well, the reason why we're doing this, of course, is because Patreon, you guys got us to the next goal. Thank you so much. You guys are amazing. The next one we're going to be doing is Misfortune. But most importantly, we got to take a stroll down the lovely lane, people, because we got so many cool new submissions from you guys out there. And I just found out that I can make a custom URL on TinyURL. So just type that in, TinyURL /KNKL fanart, whatever you choose, and go check out all these awesome pieces for yourself. Come get some cookies. All right, ladies and gentlemen, with all out of the way, let's go ahead and get into this. All right, so let's talk about Gangplank. Gangplank. Yar. Okay, so as you know, this is a little bit different from the final version that went into the game, and that is because I am now what is called a concept artist. And what a concept artist does is he works on a team and produces thousands of different pictures that we all compile, right? We make a giant pile, and then from that we sift through and find the things that we like about them. Might find a couple things, little tidbits, and you might see a couple things that were pulled from this that went into the final design, but these are by no means representation of the final product. This is just to talk about process, people. So speaking of process, this is the second rendition, and the first thing we're going to be talking about is these right over here. These things. These were the first. This was basically the first, right in the middle. This is the first one that I did. Because I was in, and I remember the meeting, right? I was in the meeting. I was like, guys, all right, I got this. Gangplank sailing around the seas of Runeterra, picking up all kinds of treasure from everybody. Let's give him a hat, but then not only a hat, but a hat on top of that. And then you got, so that's basically what this is. We got pirate hat, crown, and then a bunch of like jewels and stuff everywhere. Not one of my better designs, but that's okay because it led into this next one. These next six, this spread was really nice, and I got the idea to start concepting like this. A lot of you guys know that I like to do like line sculpting and things like that, but I'm basically working with values. And if you look closely, you can see that there's a mixture of darks, mediums, and lights, but like three different values. I like to separate my concepts into three values, and the technique, I got this technique, I stole this technique from Paul Kwan, who you guys know as Zeronis, another very talented artist working at Riot. So, and of course I got a time lapse, and we got some color stuff here, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's jump into that. Let's jump into that right now. So I just explained to you how I go about creating these things. So let's go ahead and watch a little time lapse. Let's kick back. Let's entertain ourselves, and I'll kind of talk about a couple things that were going through my mind, as well as a couple challenges, things that I liked, things that I disliked about Gangplank. So let's talk about, first of all, let's talk about what I disliked. So why I was so excited to get started on this was because Gangplank himself is he's such a beloved champion, right? He's the only pirate in our game, and he eats oranges and gets away from Malzahar ults, right? Or at least I think he does. I don't know if they patched that, so you can't do that anymore. But anyway, he eats oranges and he's awesome. So, but the problem is that visually, he just doesn't have anything interesting about him. There's nothing different about our old Gangplank that was different from like something that you'd go to, you know, like Halloween's coming up. You go to Halloween or any Halloween store, pick out a pirate costume, and it's basically Gangplank. It's too. There was nothing really interesting or unique about him. So that was what I was seeking to do here. And one of the first directions that we were given was, we want this guy to just look like he's just kind of so adorned with treasures and like interesting things that maybe he's picked up or pillaged from his piratey days, his piratey antics going around Runeterra. So that's what I was doing here. I was thinking, okay, let's get like this cool shark jaw on the side here. Didn't end up using it. Actually, he still had like a pauldron there. But I really wanted it to be like a shark jaw, but that's okay that Riot didn't use it because I'm probably going to be using it for one of my own characters. But anyway, so I had like all kinds of ideas. Like this coat right here is maybe taken from a general, like a Demacian general, right? And he wears it across. He wears it like halfway on his body, but then the other is kind of slung over his shoulder. Got this cool shark jaw. And then even the swords themselves could have been made from the bones of a sea creature that he fought and killed, right? Super cool. So it was really, really fun doing this. And something that I want to touch on that I talked about earlier was that concept art is actually very, very challenging because you guys might say, okay, well, Keenan, you used to do like the amazing advertisement images where it's everything's just like so pristine and perfectly rendered and it just looks so real, right? I feel like I'm there with the champion. How could you go from that and then going back to this? Like, you seem like you think it would be easier. You think it would be easier to go from like highly rendered, detailed, final polish stuff back to just black and white concept stuff. But it's not, because it requires a very specific set of skills, tools, and rules, okay? I like the rhyme there. So the things that we're talking about is, first of all, this thing is slowing down, so let's go ahead and speed it up. I think I took a coffee break there. But the reason why this is tough is because this stuff that I'm doing right here, where I'm designing a character, this is stuff that an entire team took weeks, if not months, to do, right? The artists are creating concept sketches like this. Those concept artists hand it over to 3D animators. They model it in 3D. And then the 3D modelers hand it over to the animators. The animators animate it, put it in the game. Then the voice actors come in and voice act it. And then the musicians create login music for it. And then when all this is said and done, they bring this final package to me, and then they say, Keenan, just make a cool fan art or something of this, right? You see how easy that is? You see how easy it is? But like, versus like, okay, Keenan, we got a brand new thing. I want you to create something from nothing. Which is basically, I mean, it's like we're starting from something, right? Because we had Gangplank, but this is basically like reimagining what Gangplank was and what he could be. So it was really fun. Okay, now we're getting into the color. So this is really fun. A lot of you guys know how I do my colors. I'm not going to do a lot of explaining of my techniques because you guys know I explained this so many times in my other videos. I work with the sandwich technique. I put lines in front, colors behind, and then I go back over and do overpainting. And that's what I'm doing here, rendering out his face, making him look really cool. And hopefully not like Gangplank's father, or not, hopefully not like Jack Sparrow's father, which I was really afraid that this one actually kind of looked like. This one looked a lot like Jack Sparrow's father. But anyway, let's go ahead and skip on over to the next one. So let's get back to this and let's just do a quick overview. So I did all of these black and white studies, eventually took it to the point where we were doing these colors, right? Colors right here. And I was doing like blues and, just kind of slight variations. But really really the biggest thing that I was improving upon at this point during my concept career was learning about exaggerating proportions, right? So, and a good example of this is I also had a chance to work on Gangplank's Minuteman skin. So if you look at this, do you see how much more interesting all these proportions are? Like the giant like upper chest and shoulders going down, contrasting with the short stubby legs, and the big like kind of squarish jaw, just square face and everything versus what we originally had. See, it's a very kind of, it almost looks like a costume design that could be worn, on Pirates of the Caribbean. So that was something that I was learning a lot about here. But we'll get into that in just a second. Let's move into this one. This is what we're going to start doing next, because this was another breakthrough that I had with concepting was, hey, you know what would be really awesome? Since we're seeing all these champions in game, like overhead, what if I just concepted them from that angle from the very beginning? Don't you think that would be like really efficient and awesome? So I was like, yes, I bet nobody's doing this. But it turned out that like all the good artists do it that way anyway. Or every artist who's worth its salt, like working at Riot Games, knows how to do in-game or isometric angles. I mean, they're not always like concepting like this, but from this point forward, I think I really started gravitating towards rendering from this angle because it solves a lot of problems. Because if you think about it, when you're looking at Gangplank in-game, you're not looking at him straight on. So like, say like the details in this lower part of his shirt and like the pants and all the little details that are basically from the waist down are going to get lost in the game. You're not going to see them as much as, say, something that would be on the upper chest, the shoulders, the hat, things that are on top of him, or a cape going down his back. Those are the things that you really want to focus on. Those are the things that you really want to develop and have them look really cool. So designing from an isometric angle really helped out a lot with that. And I think I had a good time with this one because I was able to make his face look a little bit different than Jack Sparrow's father or Jack Sparrow himself. So I was really happy with that. But another thing that I really like to do that helps out a lot is I lay in shapes. And you guys can see this. I know it's sped up so many times, but take a look at that gun. Take a look at the gun that he's holding out. That's how I start out. I start out with shapes and just simple values, and then from that I kind of sculpt it into place. And I think further down the line here, I'll actually start refining the gun Probably on the next one. Let's go ahead and do that one. So, oh yeah, here we go. So watch how I go about refining this gun. But then I run into another problem. And that is that I was trying to design a gun with him kind of like holding it, right? And that causes so many problems. It's like I got to make it fit into his hand and all that stuff. So eventually what I end up doing is I just cut it out, start it all over again, and then I just draw it to the side, and then I'll actually end up dropping it back in. You might ask, Keenan, how did you even come up with that shape language? Well, very simple. Just look up old school flintlock pistols, right? And what's really cool is that you look at the construction of this. It's like got like some weird little thingy that comes down and hits this little thingy. And what I did was I actually ended up going on YouTube and I watched a video about how these old school flintlock pistols worked, right? This little hammer thing comes down and hits something called a frizzen, which creates sparks. And then those sparks drop into a little bucket or a little retainer thing that has powder in it, gunpowder. That powder ignites and goes into the barrel of the gun and then explodes and shoots the pellet into the person's face or the minion, last hitting a minion, or denying a minion from your enemy. But I think they took that out. You can't even do that anymore. You can't play deny plank anymore. That was too cheap. They nerfed his gun. It's quite sad, but it's okay because they gave him exploding barrels, which is another thing we're going to get into in just a moment here. So, okay, so we got all that stuff done. We're moving into the colors, dropping in the colors behind the lines. You guys have seen me do this a million times. Let's go ahead and fast forward to the next one. Oh, that's it. Okay, cool. Oh, wait, that was it? I don't mean to cut you short. Sorry. Okay, well, in that case, yeah, let's just finish this one out. So you guys can see in fast motion how I drop all the colors behind. You notice that it looks very dark. So there's a couple things, and that's okay. At this point, I want it to look dark because I paint dark colors first. Then I go back in and add the lights. Makes it look so much more natural. I feel like it's much more easier to do it that way. And then, of course, once you color the lines and then do a little bit of overpainting, voila, you have finished Gangplank, and he looks awesome. Alrighty, people. So before we finish today's show, I do have a couple more things available for you, a couple more things to talk about. One is our Minuteman Gangplank. So I talked a lot about back views. I did a little bit of a tutorial of this, or I kind of talked about it with Fiora's update. And in this one was a lot of fun too. Because specifically this little orange canteen, I don't know if this actually went into the final game. Can anybody tell me if this actually made it to the final game? I'll be quite disappointed if that didn't make it. But remember I was talking about explosions and barrels? Well, if you look very closely, this is just a good old, Photoshop PSD, right? Nothing, no tricks, no smoke and mirrors, but with a press of a button, what happens? Nothing happens. Something was supposed to happen there. Okay, let's pull this up again. Hey, there's the timeline. Oh, there we go. Okay, cool. Well, I just basically revealed what happens. Okay, so the surprise was that you can actually animate in Photoshop. And because the reason why this would come in handy is because not only are you going to be concepting characters and costumes and armor and monsters, but also there's effects. There's visual effects that need to go into this game. And oftentimes what most people will do is they'll just have static images to kind of give a look and feel for something. But I decided to try something a little bit different, and this was a trick that was shown to me by my coworker, Larry Ray. He showed me how you could basically draw, basically take layers in Photoshop and have them act as frames, almost like a flip book. And then you can compile them and organize them with something called timeline. And the way that you get to that is right up here. You go Window, and then you press Timeline, okay? And then if I click it, it goes away, obviously, but let's go ahead and bring it back. Timeline. So let's kind of take a look at this. For a detailed walkthrough of how timeline works, I would highly recommend that you guys look elsewhere for like anything in depth. I am considering doing something on this. And for those of you who are watching, this is like the latest version of it. There's a ton of like older versions for like if you're running an older version of Photoshop. But this is really awesome. It's basically like a mini After Effects. Mini After Effects in Photoshop. So let's take a look at this. Let's go ahead and take a look at this. So if you guys look down here, we have a layer, where we have a group of layers called Explosion 1. That's what comprises this entire thing. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. Let's open up that layer. What's inside? We got cloud. Oh, hey, take that away. We got barrel shrapnel, and we got lights. Cool, huh? So basically the way that I go about doing this is I create layers. I create one layer after the other, and then I arrange them with this timeline so that way they're appearing one at a time, almost basically like a flip book. It appears, disappears, makes room for the next layer to come in. And then you basically get a cool effect like this. And I layer, I try not to do, like imagine if I had to draw this entire thing all at once, like the explosion, the barrel shrapnel, and the lights, that would be kind of a pain in the butt. And then like the powder and all that stuff. I like to separate things out group them into categories, basically. So that's the way that I go about doing that. And if you're curious about this, don't worry. I'm going to put it on Patreon. You can check it out for yourself. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen. With all that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and end today's show. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this lovely journey. I am Captain KNKL. Thank you for joining me for the Gangplank visual update. Thumbs up if you like it. Thumbs down if you don't. I almost said my name again. But before we end, I got to say thank you to my amazing Buccaneers. My defenders of the KNKL Kingdom, David Chiariello and Laura Bashir. And we have a third patron. We have a third sponsor. He's going to be getting his awesome portrait put up here in just a couple days. Maybe we can have it up by Thursday. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, thank you guys for joining me so much. I appreciate all the support on Patreon. Like I said, next tutorial will be on Misfortune, Cowgirl Misfortune. You guys have a good one. I'll see you on Thursday. And until then, take care. See ya. Well, blow me down.